Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome. We are ReBingeIt, and this is our Star Trek Prodigy podcast. My name is James.
And my name is Kim, and we are watching and overanalyzing every episode of Star Trek Prodigy like true Star Trek geeks. Hit it. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are covering Season 2, Episodes 7 and 8. I got the episode numbers all wrong last week, but that's what we're doing this week.
Yes, we got them right this week.
Yes. I don't know how I got confused. It's confusing to do two of them, and I'm old, and I can't remember anything.
The fact that both of us missed it, I think, is pretty funny.
Because we both had to go through the edit, and it was in the final listen before releasing that I went, no, those episode numbers aren't right, but I'm releasing it anyway. It's been a few weeks now since Comic-Con, but This is the first time we're recording.
Yes, I picked up a Comic-Con exclusive, COVID, so I was sick as a dog for a week.
Yes, not so much an exclusive, unfortunately. I managed to avoid it, which is good.
Yes.
But we should talk about a few interesting things that happened at Comic-Con. And
absolutely awesome.
The first one was James finished his costume in time. Looked amazing. If you don't follow us on Instagram, you should. You can see his picture there.
11:30 on Wednesday night, we did the first test fitting. As Kim is saying, I just want to go to bed.
I really did want to go to bed, but you got it done. You looked amazing.
Yes, I was very happy with the way it came out, and two people actually knew where the character came from, which was really impressive.
That was good. And then the other thing that happened was we did get into the Star Trek Prodigy panel, which was pretty great. So that panel was on Sunday morning at 10 a.m., and it was not in Hall H. So all those things worked in our favor to be able to get into the panel. If it had been at a different time of day, it would have been more challenging. But because it was right after the doors opened, you know, it wasn't too hard to get in. Although I still don't understand how there was such a long line before the official door opening. Those kinds of things confuse me. Somebody knows the secret of how to get in. It doesn't matter. We got in. We were very close to the front.
Second row.
And we met some other Prodigy fans. We met an absolute Kate Mulgrew super fan.
Yes.
I think we could safely say she was like buzzing out of her mind to meet Kate Mulgrew.
It was pretty awesome. We were right in front of Kate Mulgrew. We got the perfect seats. And I will say, she knows how to work a crowd.
Yeah, she was awesome. I mostly at Comic-Con, I go to panels.
Yeah.
I very rarely sit anywhere near the front. I don't care about being super close to people. I just want to hear what they have to say. But I was willing to go all the way to the front to get as close to Kate Mulgrew as possible. So we were very close, had some great pictures, which we posted them on our Facebook page.
Yeah.
I definitely also put them on Threads and what used to be called Twitter. But yeah, we got a very good close-up view of Kate Mulgrew. She held court, I would say, for most of that panel.
Yes.
They didn't do questions from the audience, which is good, but they did show an episode. And because we knew which episode they were going to show, we watched a bunch of episodes the night before because there's nothing I hate more than spoilers. We didn't go all the way to the end of the season, but we did watch up to that episode, and we'll talk about that later. So now we know some of the things that are coming, which we hadn't done before, but it's better that we did that than just walked in there and then skipped a bunch of episodes to see what happened.
The audience reaction to the show was fantastic. It was like you were in the Marvel panel.
Yeah, it was a good crowd. They could have had a bigger room even because it was packed, and I'm sure some people didn't get in. So we were quite lucky to get in and have such a good seat. And I should probably also say who else was on the panel. The actor who plays Dal was there. Brett Gray, I believe is his name. And then the Hageman brothers, the two who actually created Prodigy. So those were the four people on the panel. But Kate Mulgrew did most of the talking. But what I would say about her is she was just exceedingly positive and about the show and about everything. She was just absolutely lovely, and she was funny. She was great, and I really enjoyed getting to hear her talk. We talked a little bit about should we get up really early, because we had to get there earlier than normal, and it's always an ordeal, and also you get home late the night before from Comic-Con, so it's exhausting. But, I mean, I said, I feel like this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to hear her speak, because I've never seen her in person. And so I'm glad that we did it, and I'm glad that we had the luck to get in as well. It was really awesome.
It really was. And the other thing we got to do was we got to meet Aaron J. Welke, the good Aaron, And
the other Aaron, Dr. Aaron McDonald, who is the science advisor for Star Trek. Yes, we actually met both of them and talked to them in person. I mean, we didn't have a conversation with Kate Mulgrew. We were just close to her as she spoke. But we did meet these other two. So a couple of things. We saw Dr. Aaron McDonald on a few panels.
Yeah,
and we saw Aaron Waltke, who is a co-executive producer and one of the writers for Prodigy.
Yep.
And I've spoken to him on Twitter a few times. And it was actually fun to meet him in person. I told him how much we have really enjoyed Prodigy. I told him I couldn't believe that he managed to make me cry over a hologram dying. And we had a good chat, and I know he listens to this podcast, so I appreciate just how nice he was, and and friendly and polite, and we had a good chat with him. And in terms of Aaron McDonald, we learned a few interesting things about her.
Her love of folk metal.
Oh, yes, we did learn that. She was on this panel with some other people in science, and all of them had been inspired by Star Trek growing up.
Yeah.
But that's not what she had been inspired by. She was actually inspired by The X-Files and by Dana Scully. And so I had a little chat with her about that because I, too, was very inspired by Dana Scully and loved that character. But it was funny that she was the only one on that panel working on Star Trek, and she hadn't grown up watching it. Yeah. She was introduced to it in college. She told us that her favorite moment, because, she appears in Temporal Mechanics 101 and also at the end of season 1. But this season, she appears in that little sort of Jurassic Park-like video. And she told us that her favorite moment is the scene where Dal is just looking at her picture as she's speaking on his iPad, whatever, his data pad. And I told her that was the exact image that we used for that episode as well. So that was very cute. So yeah, it was just cool to chat with both of them about a show that we like so much, right? That was just really fun. Right. Anything else you want to say about the con?
It was a very good Trek con. I feel I got my Trek in.
It was a very good Trek con, and I got to go to my sort of weird niche panels as well, and I went to one that talked about neurological injuries and how they're portrayed in comics and movies. I went to that because, I've had my own neurological spinal injury, and that's an interesting topic to me. What I learned in that panel was two things. One, there's a Simpsons episode where Homer gets a crayon up his nose and it goes into his brain. And what I learned in that panel is that is possible. And it happens because there's just a very thin membrane protecting your brain from things going in your nose. Horrifying. And the other thing I learned, which I'm still not sure I believe, which is when Bane breaks Batman's back.
Oh, yeah.
That's apparently, he could have recovered from that. I'm like, I don't think so. I still don't believe it. But that was a cool panel with 3 doctors, 2 neurosurgeons, one a brain surgeon, one a spinal surgeon, and then another doctor. But that's the exact stuff I love at Comic-Con.
That is the epitome of one of those just bizarre panels at Comic-Con where they have just crazy experts to talk about the subject.
And people go.
Yeah.
It's cool. And I didn't get to go to any of the legal ones this year. There were so many good panels. I couldn't get to all of them. But that neurological one, I loved it. That was really cool. I did go to another one that talked about the use of comics to help young people, well, any people, get over grief in their life. Yeah. That was super interesting as well. And as you can imagine, a bit of a dark, kind of grim panel, but I did think that was interesting too. So another example is something that I really like to do at Comic-Con.
Those wacky panels are absolutely one of the things at Comic-Con I love going to. As well as the cosplay and talking to other cosplayers.
Yeah. To me, it's still the unexpected part of it. I didn't know it existed until I finally broke down and went once and then thought, hey, there is stuff for me here.
There's a lot of stuff for you there.
Yeah. So I would say 2024 Comic-Con, big success.
Yeah.
And my back held up, seemed good until a day or two later when you got sick.
Yeah.
Except for that, it went well.
Do we want to talk about this episode now?
Yes, I think we should. I did want to cover it because I did promise we would talk about it if we got into the panel. So I wanted to make sure we did. So yes. All right, let's then start with Season 2, Episode 7, The Fast and the Curious. I have the notes for that one. And then James has the notes for the next episode, which is, what's the title of the next episode?
Is There in Beauty No Truth? Which, of course, is a play on the original series episode. Is There in Truth No Beauty?
Is that why I can't? That title just doesn't stick with me.
Right.
I guess because it's a play on words a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it was,
okay.
if you remember, it was Dr. Pulaski's first appearance in Trek.
It was the Medusan episode?
Correct.
Mm.
And it still surprised me that nobody in TNG noticed she was over 100 years old.
Okay, that makes sense then for the title for this episode, since it is more about Zero.
Exactly.
But the original episode, god-awful. do not watch.
Oh, no, you did not
Terrible.
like that one.
Mm-mm. Terrible, terrible. Yeah, we watched it, I think, I can't remember if it was before Prodigy Season 1 or during Prodigy Season 1 to sort of remind ourselves of who the Medusans were.
Right.
And that is a sexist pile of nonsense that I do not recommend. Like so many episodes of the original series.
It did not age well, is an understatement.
No. Okay, but we're starting with episode 7, The Fast and the Curious, so let's get going.
Which is also a play on a movie title.
True.
They do like their wordplay in Prodigy.
Yeah, because we had the Amok Time Amok last season.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
One of my favorite episodes so far. Okay, in the opening of this episode, in case you forgot, the young crew stole the Infinity before it was burned up in a blue star in the previous episode. So they're now hurtling toward the Spiral Nebula where they believe Chakotay can be found.
Yep.
Dal is recording a captain's log, which makes everyone roll their eyes because he is not the captain, and they are all there to remind him he is not the captain.
Oh, he still so wants to be captain.
He really does. Raktak is annoyed on this ship because it's a small space and she keeps hitting her head and losing her stuff in the cramped space, so she's not happy. And then there's some toilet humor as Jankum stinks up the ship. And the one thing I did like in all of this is it makes Zero appreciate not having a nose. I thought that was great.
A little bathroom humor.
Yeah, on brand for Jankum. The computer tells them it'll take 61 days to reach the Spiral Nebula, and in these cramped quarters, everybody's very frustrated by that. However, the computer also gives them an alternate route through a transwarp conduit. Of course, this is Borg technology, in case you didn't know. So they all debate whether or not they should use this conduit because while they are afraid of the Borg, Gwen needs the timeline fixed as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So every minute that goes by, she's in danger of disappearing.
Well, Dal immediately wants to use this technology, which seems a little reckless and does seem very on brand for Voyager Janeway. So I think
very Janeway.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he has the good makings of a Starfleet captain.
And if you don't believe us, go watch season 1 of Voyager, which we just finished recently.
Yeah.
And she is very reckless. Yeah, she would have absolutely jumped right into this thing. No doubt.
I do like Gwyn's comment here when they decide on this course of action. She says, once again, not the captain.
Yes. So into the conduit they go, but they are very quickly attacked by some kind of flying mechanical bug, which pulls them out of the conduit and forces them to land on a purple and pink planet.
I love the visual style again. When they're going to the conduit, the look of the Borg tech and the traditional use of the green.
Oh, yeah, that was very cool.
The color palette in this show is always on 11. It's so impressive.
Yeah, it's so extreme, the colors. Yeah. Unfortunately, this new planet that we land on is even stinkier than Jankum's bathroom antics, and we have to have some comments about that. Zero and Murph fly up to the top of the Infinity to find the thing that caused them to crash, and Zero immediately recognizes it as Kazon technology.
Yeah, we've not seen them in a while.
No, and this, of course, scares everybody because the Kazon are the ones who rounded up the crew and sold them to the Diviner in season 1, so they do not like the Kazon.
Yep.
Then some Kazon appear and they round up the crew with some guns. However, Zero and Murph are not visible to them on top of the ship, so Zero and Dal communicate telepathically.
And these Kazon appear to be pretty much as thorough as the Kazon we're used to. Kind of not very good at their jobs.
Yeah, as we find watching Voyager, the Kazon aren't exactly completely trained.
Yes.
Maybe?
Yeah. They're a little bit amateur, I think.
Yeah, not disciplined.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly it. Also in the scene, when they're entering the atmosphere of the planet, that was really cool. They showed atmospheric heating on re-entry.
Oh, yes. Yeah, they did.
I'm like, wow, was Erin McDonald, is this one of her little things of, it would get hot. Show some, show like a proper re-entry.
Oh, I don't know if it was her specifically, but yeah, that was a nice touch.
I'm going to think it's her.
Okay. She said you could message her. You can ask her. Maybe when we get to the end of the season, we'll ask her if she'll come on and explain all the timey-wimey stuff in this season to us, because it is very confusing. Back on Voyager, and they're on their way back to Earth, but Janeway wants to keep searching and scanning for Chakotay. She hasn't given up. Counselor Noam chats with Jankum in the mess hall, and we see, of course, that all these holograms, everybody's in the wrong bodies.
Yes.
Rock Talk, who is actually Jankum, calls coffee dirt water, which made me laugh. I mean, it's not quite as good as Ted Lasso calling tea garbage water, but it's very close.
How do you take your tea?
Straight back to the counter. There's been a horrible mistake. Oh, that's so funny.
Majel here might have the line of the episode. They are acting more unusual, even for them.
That's right. Majel is the only one who recognizes that the crew is acting a bit strangely.
Yep.
Back to the real crew, and we meet a Kazon called Ekthi, who claims to be the leader of the planet and ruler of the transwarp conduit.
Yep.
This Kazon is acting a little strangely because when he shouts to everyone to be quiet and they gasp, he turns and quietly says to himself, well, that was a little loud, like he's arguing with himself. So he's got something going on, but we don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Gwen is able to try a calm negotiation as she's the more mature one in this crew.
She is the grown-up.
And the Kazon says he has a trained pilot who needs some competition. And he says, if you race him and win, your prize will be your freedom. Now, first of all, why do we believe things like that? We shouldn't believe it. And secondly, why don't we ask more questions? We just okay, let's go.
Well, that's one of the fundamental things with Star Trek. Nobody asks enough questions.
Right. We have covered that before. Meanwhile, outside, Zero and Murph discover several crashed ships on this planet and realize they might be in bigger trouble than they originally thought.
And most importantly, one of those ships is NCC 42136.
Yes, this was the USS Cairo that Jellicoe used to command, which is hilarious.
His first command as captain.
Yes, but it disappeared with a different captain during the Dominion War. So just your usual Prodigy Easter egg. If you're interested. If you're not, it's okay. The show is still good, but they got these little things hidden there. I'm sure there's many of them we missed, but we did pick that one up.
I gotta love that they throw these little things in.
Yeah.
For the fan base that's going to go, oh, we got to go and look that up. We got to go and find out what that is.
Exactly.
What does that mean? I mean, it's...
Exactly.
I do like how they embrace Star Trek history and throw these little things around.
We get a quick little lineup of ships for everybody to race in, and Rock Talk and Gwyn are in one ship, and Jankum and Dal are in one ship, and then there's 3 other ships that we don't see the pilots for.
I couldn't decide whether this was a little bit like Wacky Races or... Now, this is pod racing.
Yeah, pod racing is definitely in my notes. So the race starts, and pretty quickly, the lead Kazon dude starts pressing some buttons and causing dangerous obstacles on the course.
Yep. We also see Ekthi seeming a little more off as he's talking to his reflection again.
Yes, he's still having a conversation with himself. When one of the other ships in the race blows up, Rock Talk gets scared and she's not having fun anymore.
No.
It gets to the point where Gwen is about to win the race, but she realizes that Dal is in trouble because he crashed into one of those other ships, and she goes back to help him. This upsets the Kazon guy, Ekthi, with Zero and Murph watching on, and Zero finally recognizes, he appears a bit mad.
Gwyn does bring up a good point during the race when Rock asks what was Dal thinking, and Gwen pretty much has his number when she says he wasn't.
Yeah, because he actually crashes into Gwen's ship, and it causes something to go wrong with the little thing that's basically keeping Gwen alive.
Yeah.
So yeah, he definitely was not thinking. Well, Dal jumps out of his crashed ship and runs to help one of the other crashed ships, but he finds that the pilot is actually a robot.
Yep.
And he calls Zero to warn them that something is suspicious, right? And this is when the Kazon leader discovers Zero and Murph are in his chamber, and he tells the guards to grab them. In the scuffle, we see the guards, all of them are robots, and the leader has Ekthi. He has a device attached to the side of his head, likely controlling him. Zero and Murph battle the guy and eventually pull this device off. And the Kazon leader, he's immediately confused about where he is.
Yeah, he has no memory of what's been happening.
Yeah, and then the glass or maybe ice behind him where he was looking at his reflection, it immediately cracks. And what we find behind it is a bunch of possibly evil computers, which is often the case in Star Trek.
Oh, yeah, the whole setup and the little pyramid kind of thing that is flashing with the lights on it. That's the computer. It's iconic is the only way to describe it.
Yes. Ekthi says this used to be a training facility for the Kazon where pilots were tested and trained, but something went wrong with the training program. AI.
Yep.
And it started pitting pilots against each other, killing them off one by one. That is not a good way to end up with trained pilots.
This also so reminds me of Lower Decks, where they have the collection of evil AIs.
Yes. The computer starts talking to Zero, recognizing them as Medusan. And the computer says it has evolved by overcoming any organic obstacle and taking technology that it finds in the transport conduit to perfect pilots. I don't know. I listened to this multiple times. I'm not entirely sure it makes sense, but essentially it's very Borg-like, what it's describing.
Well, it sounds like, okay, overanalysis.
Okay.
We know that the Kazon will basically steal anything from anyone and try to cobble together their technology into their own.
True.
I would wonder whether the Kazon pulled stuff from the conduit, maybe Borg wreckage, pieces of Borg technology, and stuck it onto their computer and tried to bring it in and ended up basically corrupting their computer.
Creating a Borg computer.
Yeah, and creating a computer that has these Borg elements of, I will help everybody achieve perfection by, creating these perfect pilot racers. So they created their own problem here.
It's true if you think about, the whole thing is unhinged, what's happening. But it's paralleling so well with the things that we know. It's paralleling really well with the sort of short-sightedness of the Kazon.
Yes.
Along with we're going to perfect everything in a way that doesn't really make sense to the things that we're taking, from the Borg. So, if you look at it that way, it actually is kind of cool.
Well, to quote the Borg Queen, I bring other races closer to perfection.
Right. And that is what this computer's trying to do, is trying to make the perfect pilot.
Right.
Which does not help the Kazon in any way, shape, or form.
No.
That's not what they need, one perfect pilot, and then everybody else is dead. That's not super helpful. Well, what makes matters worse in this situation, Murph has been at least partially assimilated, and he starts attacking Zero. The computer calls Zero a non-corporeal living in an inferior shell. Not inaccurate.
Yeah.
Things are going pretty badly just as the rest of the crew arrive.
We did get some good lines from Dal here, though, where he's crashed, the ship's destroyed, Gwyn stops to rescue him, and he says, we'll call it a tie.
Yeah, that reminds me of that scene with Chakotay and Bailana where she was beating him in, I don't remember what game, and he was like, I had you right where I wanted you. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I do like how they're keeping Dal consistent. They're maintaining that aspect of him we saw in the first series. And I like how they haven't gone for the temptation of making him perfect, of making him the hero with all the answers.
Yeah, no, not at all.
He's sort of impulsive and he reacts. And I like that they've managed to keep that.
I wonder what it's like for the actor to be on the Prodigy panel sitting next to Kate Mulgrew, where you are not getting much attention. The people were not there to see him.
Yeah.
But really, he's the main character of this show.
Right.
Hopefully he takes it well, that she reflects on him and eventually he can be the bigger star, but not today.
It's kind of like any of the living Star Trek people today being on a panel with Shatner.
Except maybe I would argue Patrick Stewart. I think he has maybe become a bigger star at this point and eclipsed Shatner.
Well, there's the other stuff that he's done. I mean, I know people who loved his portrayal of Professor X.
Yeah, well, that's
and they're not
true.
even Trek fans. Yeah.
No, that's true.
And I think a lot of Shatner, though, comes down to legend.
Yeah.
I think he's reached that stage.
No, he definitely has. But if you're going to put Shatner on a stage, maybe with one of the characters from, I don't know, Lower Decks, Shatner's probably going to get most of the questions and most of the attention.
Agreed, yeah.
But that's sort of how it goes, right? The previous generation is what built the current generation. And as long as people can recognize that just helps build my own legend, not that it is eclipsing it. But that's easy to say when I'm not the one who has to deal with it.
Yes.
But the thing is, it's not about him as an actor. It's about Captain Kirk.
Yes.
It's about Star Trek. It's about something completely different. And the same thing when we were there to see Kate Mulgrew. It's not really about Kate Mulgrew. It's about Janeway, which is a whole different thing. Well, back to the action. And when everyone appears to be in danger, Zero breaks off their own arms and legs because they're being held by something.
Tentacles from the evil robot AI thing.
Yes, evil robot tentacles. Anyway, breaks off their own arms and legs and flies into the evil computer, causing quite an explosion. And I did worry that perhaps everyone should cover their eyes at this point because, remember, the Medusans are very dangerous.
Yep. Drive you crazy if you catch a few of them.
Yes, we haven't talked about that much in season 2. I mean, we talked about it all the time in season 1. I guess because it was a major plot point, but not so much here. Nobody covers their eyes, and ultimately the computer appears to have been completely destroyed. But there is this weird sort of high-pitched shriek and a fireball that shoots straight up into the air. And I wondered if maybe, was that an actual creature inside that machine or what that was? I guess it leaves it open for interpretation.
Was it an escape pod launching?
No, it could have been. But the entire structure that they're in starts collapsing. Murph and the Kazon, fortunately, become unassimilated, and they run to Zero, who is heavily damaged, and also they say that they cannot move. The front of Zero's containment suit is cracked, so again, I worried that maybe we should be worried about ourselves as well, but we aren't.
Don't want the Medusan leaking out.
Yes. So we go back to the Infinity, and Rock Talk manages to repair Gwen's armband, but she is unable to do anything about Zero's containment suit because they don't have the right tools. And they aren't really sure what to do about Zero, but they intend to at least look after them until they figure it out.
Yeah.
So we wave goodbye to another planet and to the Kazon dude who hopefully has his own way off the planet and he's not stranded there by himself, but it's like, see you later.
It's his planet, he'll be fine there.
Yeah, he's still in charge of that planet. Yep. There's just nobody left
There's just nobody left, right, yeah. He's a Marge, but he actually doesn't have any followers or a clan anymore.
Yeah, because the computer killed them all off.
Not so good.
Back to Voyager, and Majel passes Gwen in the hallway, and Gwen's hologram, this is the hologram, Gwen glitches a bit, and Majel follows her back to her quarters. This Gwen, of course, is actually Murph, so he's making Murph noises.
Yep.
And when Majel goes to knock on the door, time seems to slow everywhere on Voyager, and some very suspicious ghost-like tentacles, more tentacles in this episode.
Tentacles feature very heavily in this season.
That's true. They enter the ship going past Majel and grabbing Gwen. But when Gwen, who is really a hologram, disappears, the tentacle thing seems to shriek and retreat. And time restarts without anyone noticing what happened except for the viewer.
Yeah.
The door to Gwen's quarters opens, and Majel is then shocked to see that Gwen isn't there, even though she just walked in right ahead of her. The end.
Wouldn't that be the point? She should be calling for like a medical emergency or something because Gwen might have actually phased out of this reality.
Well, maybe she did. She might have because, in the next episode, Janeway is involved in this conversation. Or the next time we see them.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe she does. All right, well, should we go to the next episode?
Absolutely. On to episode 8. Is there in beauty no truth? In the opening, we learn the crew is still traveling and it's been about a week. Are they still in the transwarp conduit here?
I assume they did use the transwarp conduit because it was supposed to take them 61 days to get there otherwise. So yeah, I think so.
Zero's suit is still unrepairable, and they seem to be putting a very brave face on it, which is kind of sad.
Mm-hmm.
Zero then receives a telepathic message from someone saying they are Medusan and they can help. The messages are coming from a non-corporeal colony made up of Medusans and other species. Jankum, who may be reverting to Jankum Classic, says it sounds like a planet of a bunch of nobodies, because it's a bunch of people with no bodies.
Nice.
10 out of 10 to Jankum for an excellent dad joke there.
That really is a dad joke.
The beings tell Zero they can fix the suit, and Zero detects no ill intent. Dal kind of hedges because they don't have time for this, and he says they need to find the protostar. Gwyn, being truly noble, points out that Zero sacrificed themselves to save the crew, so they should help.
It's interesting, though, because Zero does say that they can't read the minds of the people that they're communicating with. So could you detect ill intent if you can't read their minds and you can't see them?
That's kind of a good point. Because the concern should be maybe they're deliberately shielding their minds from Zero so he can't tell ill intent.
Exactly.
Off to the planet of the nobodies. And this one is made up of blues and yellows instead of the usual pinks and purples. It's a subtle change in palette here.
Yep.
Several tall green creatures greet the Infinity as the crew exits wearing red visors. So another Easter egg back to the episode that introduced Medusans where Spock wore the red visor.
Yeah.
The first creature they meet, who is named Ion, says the protective eyewear is unnecessary, and the planet is called Ovidia 4.
It's funny. They just met this creature. They've never seen anyone like it before, but we're just going to believe them. Sure.
Oh, the visors aren't necessary. Oops.
Yeah.
They're surprised to see these people are corporeal beings, and Ion tells them they are all energy-based life forms from across the galaxy, and the rings of this planet have the unique ability to foster physical forms for non-corporeals. Zero is exceedingly excited about the science of all of this, Ion telling him that it's a great time to visit because tonight we celebrate the Feast of the Senses. And honestly, anybody who watches sci-fi should be worried at this point, because this could mean they're going to eat your friends.
Yeah, I was very suspicious of that name.
Or at least something nefarious, like at the end of the feast, they're going to sacrifice your friends to the evil god being living in the rings. Some of these other beings also are getting a good sniff of Jankum, calling him pungent.
Oh. Poor stinky Jankum.
And we get a vaguely scientific explanation about these rings of the planet, which Roktok recognizes as unique hydrocarbon chains and calling them the building blocks of life. She, of course, is the one most excited about the science of all of this. Because of this mysterious planet, the non-corporeals do not need containment suits. And Zero asks if the same could be done for them. Ion tells Zero if that's what he wants, then yes. Zero explains to the crew how they've always felt an emptiness because they can't experience life the way the others do. Everyone is very supportive, so they take Zero and put them in one of the purple pods for biotransference. I do feel they did not ask enough questions about precisely what was going to happen, and maybe if there was some long-term side effects.
Yeah, and is it permanent? And because Ion does say at the beginning that the rings of the planet allow them to be in these corporeal bodies.
Right,
so ask some questions like, well, what happens if I leave the planet? Oh, no, we don't want to talk about that.
One of the other green aliens tells Ion, you didn't tell them everything. And Ion just replies, I gave them the choice. Nothing more. The truth will come. So, we know something's up here.
Somebody lying.
I think this is the definition of lying by omission.
Yeah, oh, totally, yeah.
I'm pretty sure Ion also sells timeshares. Back on Voyager, Nova Squad and the holograms are playing Parisi Squares on the holodeck. But it's a ruse, as Janeway and Tenners and the Doctor have been observing. It seems Majel told them the young crew has been acting strangely. They recognize that the personalities are all mixed up, and the Doctor does eventually realize that this is a plot line from one of his holo novels, where a character created holo duplicates of themselves. This makes Janeway turn off all the holo emitters, and we see everyone was a hologram. The Doctor is great here, as he describes it as, I've been betrayed by one of my own brilliant storylines.
Oh my God. The Doctor, as usual, so full of himself.
Janeway believes there's no way that our young crew left the ship, as all the shuttles are accounted for. Antennas, however, figures out they may have gotten aboard the Infinity. Janeway orders a reverse course and tells Antennas to locate the missing hologram version of Gwyn, who is not part of the game and has been missing for 2 days. How did Gwyn mask the non-authorized emergency transport? Plus, wouldn't the computer report when somebody disappears, even if it's the hologram version of Gwyn?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that before, that there aren't enough alerts when things happen. It's like we're not good at observability of the technology around the ship, because we found there are cameras, or at least we see this later, that there are cameras actually right in her quarters, but the computer doesn't tell anybody that anything happened.
Oh, you know, the one person who's in charge of all the alerts, they get so many of them, they just pipe them all to dev null.
Yeah, because most of them are just false. Yeah. I am familiar with this situation.
Although I suppose they could have known Gwyn was missing because Majel might have reported it.
Yeah, I think we can assume that Majel reported what happened, that she went looking for Gwen, because they would then ask the computer where Gwen was, and the computer would say, Gwen's not on Voyager.
Yeah, and then they would start looking at the others.
Yeah, and then she said, and by the way, the others are all acting weird, something's going on. At least she didn't just go call Jellicoe. And she went to Janeway, which is what she should have been doing in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, Jellicoe's evil, so maybe she's figured that out.
He's not evil. He's just mean.
I stand by my view of Jellicoe.
All right.
Back on non-corporeal world, Zero wakes up with a body. They are now very tall and lanky and sort of greenish blue in color.
Mm-hmm.
They're excited to have fingers and toes and things to feel with, and they're a bit wobbly on their new legs, but they're very pleased to have a body. The crew comes in to get a look at the new Zero, and Rock is very happy to finally give them a real hug.
No.
Everyone is very happy, and Ion tells Zero that they'll experience even more at the Feast of the Senses.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool effect here because you can see the Medusan cloud appearing in the eyes of the new body.
Yeah.
So, from a Star Trek plot perspective,
Mm-hmm.
didn't you expect there to be something along the lines of, to be corporeal, the machine merely needs to absorb the life energy of all your companions?
Oh. No, I did not. It's not a horror movie.
Honestly, I was expecting something along the lines through this whole episode.
Okay.
The penny to drop.
Yeah. No, that's funny. No, I didn't think about that. But it would not have surprised me if they then went to the Feast of the Senses and said, okay, now we have to eat all of your friends. And then you can see what it's like to taste. Oh, no, there's no choice.
Yes.
You die if you don't. Yeah.
Roast Jankum.
Roast Jankum.
The feast begins as a big party with dancing and food. Jankum shows Zero how to start cramming food in, and Zero starts doing just that. This did give me a flashback to Deep Space Nine, if you remember when Odo was forced to be a solid, and there was a joke about him using the bathroom.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. If food goes in, it's got to come out. It's not just in a burp.
There's going to be a learning experience here for Zero.
Yeah.
There's another little bit of humor for the kids, where Zero does a huge burp, and Jankum is very impressed. I did like how Jankum is in fine form with the line of, time to start stuffing things in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Dr. Noam is like this?
Yes, probably worse.
Some new friends start dancing with Zero, and I did feel that was almost like a nod to the Elaine Seinfeld dance. Did the creators draw some inspiration from that?
It really looked like Elaine, at the beginning, so maybe it was funny. But I also think it's a kid's show, right? And so they're just trying to say, just do what makes you happy.
Now we're all dancing and eating, and everyone is just way too happy.
Oh, yeah.
Still waiting for the penny to drop.
Mm-hmm.
Dal thanks Gwyn for reminding him that sometimes you have to stop and take a breath. Seriously, they were all way too happy here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ion joins them, and Dal asks about the crown of flowers that many of the creatures are wearing. He tells them that this is for the running of the Nazamon, which is a celebration of the Forgotten Sense, which apparently is fear.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh.
Ion saying, it's the feeling of mortality, that life is fleeting, that makes everyone feel alive.
I'm not sure.
Red flag.
I'm not sure about this.
I'm just waiting for okay, this is now where we sacrifice to the old gods.
Yep.
Ion explains that surviving the running makes everyone feel at one with their corporeal bodies. And then just drops a piece of information that their fancy green bodies deteriorate if they leave the planet. So no one ever chooses to leave.
That's an important piece of information we could have used earlier.
First of all, couldn't they just give them an emotion chip like Data so they could experience anxiety?
Mm-hmm. Watch some scary movies. I mean, yeah.
Exactly. The other point I would make here is, this almost feels like cheating. If they do not deteriorate, if they stay on the planet, does that make them immortal? I think if they want to feel alive, then they should leave, because they're missing out on the fun of aging.
Well, if they want to feel alive by being afraid of death, then you should leave behind all the crutches.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think there's a ton of logic in it, but I can see why they stay there.
Yes, I can see why it would appeal to them. I feel it's a little bit of having your cake and eating it, in real terms.
Yeah.
On a flowery hillside, the runners are preparing for the race, and one of them does explain to Zero that the flowers are there to attract the Nazamon, and that some of them don't make it to the other side. Again, I feel Zero didn't ask enough questions about exactly what all of this means. And perhaps a better name for this run would be the Race of Death.
Yeah.
Dal and Gwyn try to warn Zero before the running starts, but they don't make it in time. The starting horn sounds and everyone takes off running as we hear an ominous sound from the sky and see something large silhouetted on the clouds. Zero is too busy running and enjoying themselves to see what the Nazamon is, but we see it's a big kind of flying manta ray creature that swoops down because it's attracted by the flowers. It appears it would also scoop up some of the people running, but it's unclear exactly how dangerous it is. I'm making the assumption that it's just going after the flowers, that it feeds on them or whatever.
Yeah, it's just like a vacuum cleaner.
Yes, and you just get caught in the way.
Yeah.
Dal and Gwyn eventually catch up with Zero and explain that the inhabitants of the planet never leave. Zero is surprised they risk their lives in order to deliver this information. They reply that Zero has the right to make their own decisions, but they deserve all the information. During the discussion, Dal manages to get scooped up by the flying creature, and Zero jumps onto it, climbing into its mouth to help Dal. Even though what's happening is frightening, Zero does seem to be enjoying the view as the creature flies over the colourful land. Down below, Gwyn and team realize they need to lure it back down and begin to throw flowers in the air. As it swoops back down to the ground, Dal and Zero jump to safety. Zero is hilarious here, describing it as, "I'm terrified, but this is spectacular."
Yeah. It's kind of a funny creature once we see inside of it, because it's just like a big, open, hollow being. It doesn't even have any teeth. So, what is the danger? And do they all get just sort of spit out at the end? I don't know.
Yeah, I have questions about that. Should we talk about it now?
Sure.
So, the person at the beginning who explains this to Dal says about how you'll spend an eternity in it. So, do the bodies just get stuck in its gills or in its digestive tract and you're stuck there? Do these people actually die when the thing scoops them up?
I wonder, it's possible that they just don't know what happens, but the person does disappear, because I guess nobody has jumped out. But, based on what we see, that seems kind of silly.
Right.
Maybe they just didn't get into the digestive tract. They got out before.
Maybe it's a bit grim for the show, but you could have a good explanation, like if they get sucked into this creature, their body gets dissolved and their non-corporeal essence becomes part of the rings and they can't get out. That's a little bit gruesome, but not too bad.
Yeah, I think the problem is they don't know, because whatever happens, the person must disappear.
Yeah.
The thing maybe takes him to the other side of the planet or something and drops him off.
Oh, there's a really crappy colony on the other side of the planet that they all get stuck in.
It's an island and they don't have boats.
Yeah. After the race, Zero tells Ion they feel transformed by this experience, but they know they belong with their friends, so they cannot stay. All the other non-corporeals who are watching this seem very surprised.
Right.
I guess no one has made this choice before. I have the suspicion.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other non-corporeals here are basically hedonistic narcissists.
Well, isn't it entirely possible that they all ended up here? Maybe they were outcast from their own societies, but isn't it possible that none of them really had any friends or reason to leave?
Good point. Yeah.
And, they're calling out to people and they're finding, or beings, and they're finding ones like Zero who are able to communicate with them. And for the most part, those creatures don't have friends, don't have the opportunity to be part of a family. And then they get here, they get a body, and now they're part of a found family.
That's a really positive take on it.
Oh, thank you. Well, I can do that sometimes.
I see what you mean. Okay, I can see that appealing, especially if they're corporeal beings that have been part of a collective of some kind before and are isolated.
Yeah,
and this is a new community.
Yeah, and we don't know how long they've been there. Maybe it's been like 2 months.
All right. Yeah, we've only been here for like 90 days.
Yeah, it's not like it's been 100 years.
Yeah, they don't know that the creature that lives in the rings in another week is going to come down and harvest all of them.
Yeah, or winter hasn't happened yet, and they all die off from the cold.
Zero tells Ion that even though their body will degrade and their senses dull, it's still the first step of a journey of self-discovery and unknown possibility. Either way, they're going to take that journey with their family. And the crew, with Zero, take off triumphantly to the Prodigy theme song. Zero does deliver a little bit of a mild burn to Ion, saying that they felt the choice was kept from them.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was.
It was also interesting that Ion did seem to accept Zero's decision. So he's not completely a villain, even if he's a little bit morally questionable by lying by omission.
Yeah. Again, though, if we think about the fact that nobody has left, maybe just the assumption was, well, this is just the same thing. This creature needs a body, and then they're going to stay.
They're going to experience senses, and there's no chance they're going to want to leave.
But it's still nice to give people all the info.
Right, yes.
So they're making an informed choice.
Back on Voyager, they've reconstructed the Gwyn hologram with the correct personality. Interestingly here, we have surveillance video of Gwyn's quarters.
Yes.
Which, how many times have we discussed in our podcast? Video would be useful in Star Trek.
Yeah. I mean, this is quite invasive, too. It's in Gwen's quarters. It's one thing if it's in all the hallways.
And remember, Esri had that sighting system that could look through the walls of all the apartments and everywhere on Deep Space Nine.
Oh, right.
We learn that 8 minutes are missing from the recording, which is pretty shocking to Janeway because the computer shouldn't be able to lose time like that. When they revive the Gwyn hologram, she tells them the crew received a secret message from someone they thought was Captain Chakotay, so they took the Infinity.
I do like how they have to revive a hologram. It's a hologram.
Yeah, and how does she remember the plan to take the Infinity?
Exactly.
If when they rebooted them, they didn't know about the plan to take the Infinity?
This was also my note.
She doesn't know what happened in the 8 minutes that disappeared, but she hears this terrible noise.
Oh, the chittering.
She said she couldn't move, and it was like time stopped. And then we hear the ominous chittering. The hologram says they were there to take me, but she doesn't say who, and begins freaking out. And the doctor ends the program. Janeway says, I don't know who or what is after them, but if we don't find them first, we may lose more than just 8 minutes. Into another awesome cliffhanger ending. I love that zoom in on Janeway's face at the end. That was classic Voyager.
Yeah, that final scene is a little weird.
Yeah.
There was definitely the melodrama from Janeway. There was the chittering sounds, which are really creepy, right?
Yes.
And affecting. But it's a little strange what goes on with that hologram. Like, first of all, how did they, find the missing hologram and then put the right personality into it? And then why was a hologram actually so ridiculously emotional and freaking out? And then they couldn't, keep the hologram calm, so they just deleted it? I mean, what is happening? There's a whole bunch of weird things that happen in that scene.
And on top of that, if the personalities were mixed, why did the Gwyn hologram know what the mixed up hologram was experiencing?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's also a confusing part. The personality of Murph was in Gwen, so then they took a different personality and put it in there.
And it had the memories.
I feel like they confused themselves a bit with that one.
A little bit of hand waving with that one.
Yeah. Not unlike Star Trek normally, so it, really fits right in.
We know where we wanted to be. We're going to wave our hands and get there.
I actually think the better thing to do would have been to simply watch the video.
Yeah.
And, have the hologram too not know what happened. Although I guess the hologram didn't seem to lose time, which also doesn't make 100% sense. So,
I think if they coupled that with finding an emergency transport log somehow.
Oh, to recognize that they had actually taken the Infinity. Yes, they could have done that. But also, did the computer actually lose that time, or did it happen just super quickly to the point that they weren't able to sense it or even see it on the computer? Like, if they had slowed down the video 1,000,000 times, would they have actually seen what happened?
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't that it was actually lost. It was that it was so super compressed.
Right.
Into a microsecond, you didn't see it.
Oh, that's a good one.
They could have done that instead of what they did. I'm not saying that that's what they should have done. It was a different way they could have gotten the story out without trying to act like this Gwen hologram was really a person.
I guess what they were aiming at here was the ship was actually frozen in time. So time didn't move for the ship.
Yeah.
But let's say Starfleet's master chronometer advanced 8 minutes. So when they look at their time and the standard Starfleet time, they're like, wait a minute, where did 8 minutes go?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, it seems like we've analyzed everything quite a bit here, but do you have some things that stood out for you in these 2 episodes?
Yes. The first one, loved the evil AI. That really made me laugh. I did like the wacky race. It did feel a little bit like this is pod racing.
A little bit. It did feel a little bit like the pod race from Phantom Menace, but not really too much. I mean, the thing that I remember most about the pod race was the sound.
Oh, yeah.
And there wasn't really any of that. And the other thing that was so funny about that one was there were those, what was it, the little sand people or whatever who would shoot at them.
Raiders.
And, the Tusken Raiders. And, we didn't have any of that going on, but I did like the sort of callback to the evil computer from Lower Decks, right? That was kind of fun. So the first time through with that episode, I didn't enjoy it as much because I think I was sort of missing the nuances of what was happening.
Yeah.
And then the second time when I watched it and was taking notes and I realized the Borgness of it all, I was like, oh my God, I totally missed this the first time. And then it, it became so much more interesting. because they were playing on the fear that the crew had at the beginning about using Borg technology.
Yep.
And then it was realized at the end with a Borgy computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That leads on to exactly what was the second thing, the Borginess of it. This computer, obviously infected by Borg technology, that the Kazon probably just bolted on as something that, look what we found in the transwarp conduits. So I think it fitted with what we know of the Kazon and of the Borg, and it made it a better story.
I really love the parallels of the Borg and the Kazon and how when you bring the two of them together, it just created this big mess. That's really funny. Yeah.
It so fits for how the Kazon
It's like we took the worst of the Borg and the worst of the Kazon. And this is what we ended up with, the computer that was just basically trying to kill everybody off one at a time. It's absolutely funny. It was really, really interesting when you look at it that way.
I do think the computer might have survived with you said the fireball.
I think it did.
Escape pod.
Yeah, I think it did.
The second episode, I think things that stood out is I do like the very Data-esque way the corporeal Zero is behaving. The part where they're in the manta ray and they say, I'm terrified, but this is exhilarating. It felt very much like that sort of Data experiencing emotions.
Well, it kind of continued on with this theme with Zero where even bad things are exciting to them. Because it's a new experience. They're able to feel something they haven't felt before. They're part of this family now.
Yeah.
So I thought they carried on with that in this episode.
And I think the second thing that stood out was I was 10,000% wrong with where this episode was going to go.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know where it was going either, but I, too, felt like something very, very bad is going to happen at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
I was convinced it was going to be something along the lines of, you just need to steal the life force from your companions and you can live here forever.
Yeah.
Nicely done, people, when a storyline completely throws me.
Yeah, agreed. Something that always stands out to me with this show is the speed at which things happen.
Yes.
And this is quite amazing to me that we started this season with Zero thinking about wanting to be able to feel something physically.
Yeah.
And now, 8 episodes in, boom, got a body.
Oh, absolutely.
I really like that about this show. And this because this is the kind of thing they wouldn't do with a live action show. They would drag it out so much more. Even in the shorter seasons, they wouldn't do this much stuff in a short amount of time.
Yeah, the animation gives the creators a palette that is significantly harder to do in live action.
Oh, totally.
Oh, that makes me think of something. So, do you think the doctors are going to be visiting this planet saying, anything you can do for me?
Oh, I'd like a tall green body. That's interesting. He's not exactly a non-corporeal creature.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it seems like it would work.
He has a life form based on silicon.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, because he's already not exactly a life form. So I don't know. There's no organic matter involved. Could they do it? I don't know. They should ask him.
I'd class him as a life form. Just because you're based on silicon doesn't mean you're any less alive.
Okay. I wasn't trying to debate it. I was simply thinking of the science. Is it the same thing as the Medusan? I do not know.
Anything else stand out for you?
I don't think I had anything else that stood out.
Yeah.
I thought these were good episodes, advanced the stories, advanced the characters a little bit, but they weren't really big leaps in the story.
No.
You know?
No. That's a fair summary. These felt very much like on the way stories. There's no criticism of the actual stories or the plot or what happened.
No.
But we're on our way somewhere. These are the things that happen on the journey.
Yeah, shows need that. And,
agreed.
You know, the first episode of these two was more self-contained, and then the second episode made a huge change to Zero.
Yes. And was a callback to a theme that's been repeated through the show.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to feedback.
Okay.
Let me play X-Force 11. Here's Jeff.
Well, hello, Star Trek fans. It's Jeff, X-Force 11, leaving my feedback about Prodigy, The Fast and the Curious, and Is There Beauty in No Truth? So, The Fast and the Curious was just a fun episode, and unfortunately, we get to see a Kazon, again calling back to Voyager, not the best of enemies that they had on that tour through the Delta Quadrant. But it was interesting to see here another case of AI/technology going rogue and trying to improve things. So a bit of the Borg taking on other technologies in different ways. And so that was an interesting kind of look at things. And seeing Zero sacrifice themselves, at least their body, in order to protect the crew was just wild to see. And then we immediately follow that up in the second episode where Zero is offered a body and the ability to enjoy all those things. And yes, that does move them forward as a character, but they run the risk of knowing that that body may degrade once they leave the planet. So the question is, will the Doctor and others know how to treat that particular body if it does become ill or injured? And yes, it may degrade, but the question is, will it degrade extremely quickly, or will it degrade at the pace of a normal humanoid being? We just don't know yet, but it's an interesting change of pace of going from a character who was a non-corporeal being stuck in a suit with no senses to one that still has those senses now. So it's going to be an interesting change. And then we've got this threat of this thing reaching out for Gwyn. And I'm wondering if it's some type of timeline being trying to set them things straight. In the terms of DC and the Flash, you had the Time Race who were reaching out to set things right. And in many time-traveling stories, there is a being pushing back or different things pushing back. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays into the storyline. All right, those are my thoughts. X-Force is out.
Oh, great points from Jeff there. I'll also mention Indigo Prime from 2000 AD Rebellion. They were an organization, a company that made sure reality ran correctly.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen things like that in movies as well.
Yes.
It's an interesting question. I mean, you had a few interesting questions there, but one of them about, will the Doctor be able to help if anything goes wrong with Zero? That's an interesting question, and we certainly don't know.
Did the body come with a manual?
Yeah, well, we don't even really know how quickly the body is going to degrade now that they've left the planet, because I was like, oh, does that mean they leave the planet and they die? But I guess they don't know, is the thing. But maybe they just leave the planet and now it goes through a normal life cycle because there's nothing there to constantly repair it.
You got 100 years or you got 8 weeks.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out.
Can you go back for a recharge?
Oh, I bet you could. So maybe they can just return to the planet to fix any broken bones or anything. I mean, do they have bones? I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. We didn't get a manual.
I assume so.
I mean, they wouldn't be made up of organic material. Well, I guess they would. I don't know.
I think the point was they were. Well, because they talked about a heart and a circulatory system, which you would need a heart for. I think they're actual biologicals.
Okay, and maybe the doc can do some scans and see what's going on in there. But he is going to be annoyed, kind of in the same way when Neelix and Kes appeared on the ship. He was annoyed that he didn't have their full medical history. Right. He's going to be annoyed about that.
Nobody's given me a full medical rundown.
Who is this character?
Yeah.
What do I do with it? Yeah. Well, good news this week because our kid correspondent, Mahi, is back from her world travels.
Yes.
And we joked that she was like 23 years old now. But actually, I think she's 9. And when we started, she was 6. So she's essentially growing up with this show.
Yep.
We asked her, normally we send some questions over and she sits with her mom and she comes up with her answers and she practices and then she records. But this time, because we've actually done a bunch of episodes, we just said, hey, why don't you just catch up with us and then just record what Mahi thinks about the season so far, and she can focus on specifically the episodes from this week. So let's listen to our now 9-year-old correspondent.
Mahi's personal log, stardate 8924.12. The second season of Prodigy has been rather exciting so far. At the end of episode 8, the Protostar crew is back on their mission to put the spaceship on Tars Lamora and set the timeline right. The journey so far has been quite marvelous, with new interesting characters like the Doctor and Cadet Majel being brought in, seeing the good side of the Diviner being a caring father, with Dal and team growing up into polite yet understanding and smart Starfleet applicants, and not to miss the twist in the timeline. The Protostar team is now working hard to get into Starfleet. Rocktalk and Jenkampog are doing great at this, while Dal, as usual, is procrastinating. It was surprising to see Starfleet using cloaking technology, but not to know that Admiral Janeway had a secret mission in the works to rescue Captain Chakotay from Solum. It was a pleasure to meet the fatherly version of the Diviner. Like all good fathers, he really cared for Gwen and helped her. Like always, the team's adventures never stop. With all their good intentions, they never fail to mess things up. Gwen almost succeeded to beat Ascensia, but lost her existence to Dal's blunder that led to the change in the timeline. But her crew came through to save her just in time, thanks to the mysterious entity who's been helping them. I wonder who it is. The Doctor is an interesting and funny character. He seems to be very talented. He is able to write novels, sing opera, be a great doctor, and also appear out of nowhere, anywhere. I wish I had some of his talent. The Protostar crew, after messing things up, are still trying to fix the mess and do the right thing. When Starfleet decides to abandon the mission to find Chakotay and send the Infinity into the blue sun, the team came up with a unique plan. They attempted to create really good holograms of themselves that actually backfired a bit. The holograms nearly killed Dal. After all the discombobulation, they did succeed to get on the Infinity and divert the ship to attempt to fix the timeline and find Chakotay. Nothing goes as planned with this crew, and there's always more exciting adventures that they face. The Infinity gets steered toward an alien planet that they have no knowledge of. After an unfair race, Zero steps up for his team and destroys the machine. In this process, he gets damaged badly. I think Zero was very brave to save his pals at the cost of himself. His comrades were surely very grateful for this and have been trying their best to help him. The AI scared me, but I hope we can program and use AI in a better way than what was on the show. Zero loved this journey of feeling all the senses, but still decided to leave them all behind so that they can continue on their journey to find the Protostar and return it to Tars Lamora. So far, the second season has been more adventures than the first season, of teamwork, sacrifice, never giving up, team messing up things unintentionally, and Dal trying to be the captain continues in this season too. With the new characters brought in, we can expect more adventures and trouble for the crew. I look forward to see how the crew will fix the timeline and bring back Chakotay. I am off to see the next episode now. Bye! End Mahi's personal log.
Okay. She is now recording a personal log.
That's very cute.
I think she may be influenced by Star Trek.
I think she might be in for a lifetime of Star Trek, which is great.
Well, this is good. She seems to be enjoying the show to this point, most importantly. And the way the characters have developed a little bit and they're becoming more responsible and they're aiming at becoming part of Starfleet.
It's funny to hear her talk about the Diviner and how he's a better father than he was in season 1. And it's funny because now it seems like it's been so long since we've seen those episodes. So I had to go like, oh yeah, that also happened, just a few episodes ago. So that was cool.
It's something that I really liked as well, that they showed who the Diviner could be had he not taken that negative path. And I think it's interesting that that's one of the things she picks up as well.
And I liked her interest in the episodes here from this week where she talks about Zero being willing to make a sacrifice and really doing something special for their friends. I think that's something that maybe as seasoned adults, we don't see that quite as much, and to Mahi, that's a bigger thing, and she's really resonating with that. So I do like her attention to that in her personal log.
I think it's also, again, fascinating that we've got a show that is speaking across a true generational divide and appealing to Star Trek fans vastly different in age.
I know that everybody has their favorite Star Trek. Those of us who are fans, we all have the thing that is our favorite. And
that's
there's
my
part
Trek.
Of Star Trek that maybe we think is lesser. Like for you and me specifically, we don't think that much of Enterprise, but I didn't watch it at all. You watched it a little bit more. But like when at Comic-Con, one of the Star Trek panels that I was in, we were talking about, the different shows and the future of Star Trek. And what's so often forgotten is that the future of Star Trek is Mahi. It's getting kids interested in it. And the older the show gets, the harder that's going to be if we don't continue to evolve it. So I really love that this is what Prodigy is trying to do. And it's doing it with existing characters and with Star Trek as it is now. But they're just introducing it to a younger crowd. And it's obviously working. I don't know what the numbers are, right, of how many kids are watching this newly for the first time, but it clearly works.
Yeah, agreed. And I expect Netflix is keeping very close watch on what the viewing numbers are like.
Yeah, I'm sure. I hope the numbers are good. I don't know. In the Dr. Trek panel at Comic-Con, he asked how many people had never seen Prodigy, and it was an alarming number of people in that room who were big Star Trek fans. Yeah. And it was funny because those of us in that room who have watched Prodigy, we're all like, oh, come on, guys. Get off your butts. You're missing Trek. And at the same time, you're maybe missing an opportunity to get your kids into Trek. So come on.
Right.
But anyway, it's working for Mahi, so that's good news.
Yeah. And welcome back to the podcast, Mahi.
Yes. Okay, then we can go to Speculation Corner. Now, it's a little awkward here because we do know what's coming in the next few episodes. We still don't know how the season is going to end.
I have some for the whole season.
Okay, so we're not going to speculate on the things we know because that's not fair to those of you who are trying to just watch it one episode at a time. And the last thing we ever want to do is ruin anything for anyone. So yeah, we can speculate sort of long-term what's going to happen.
My long-term concern is that Zero will have to sacrifice their body, and they will end up back in a corporeal suit.
I believe also that's going to happen. I don't know if they'll sacrifice it or if the body will just break down and they'll have to make a decision to either die with the body or go back to the suit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. I think some kind of reckoning is coming there. But I don't know. I also feel like we don't necessarily bring those life or death type decisions into the show, so it might not be quite that grim.
Yeah.
It might just be like, oh, I enjoyed my time in this body and now I'm, back in the suit. I don't know.
I can always head back to the planet and get another one.
Yeah, I can always go back and do it again. It wasn't that hard to find because we know where that spiral nebula is we were looking for. We should be able to retrace our steps. Yeah.
How open to that is Ion? If I come back, can I swap in another body?
Yeah, probably. Do
I get like a little punch card,
You get 10, the next one's free. Yeah. No, I think that's a good speculation.
Yeah.
What else? Anything else?
Maybe one quick speculation thing.
Yeah.
I really hope somebody else other than Jankum gives Zero hygiene advice.
Oh, yes. Hopefully there are some videos that they can watch about how the body works. Although, again, we don't know how that body works. But since they were eating and burping, I think there's probably some other bodily functions they're going to have to deal with.
Yes.
Unless the whole thing was a hologram and all the food was holographic.
Hopefully the body came with a manual on a USB stick.
Yeah, that would be good if it came with a manual. Okay, I think that wraps up Speculation Corner. So we should do rating then. Do you have ratings out of 10 for each episode?
I'm giving both of these a 9. Only because we've had such great episodes that these feel like on the way they're stories.
Yeah, I understand that. I think I would agree these are very good, very entertaining, very rewatchable. I would watch them again. But maybe just slightly below the previous 2 episodes that we watched.
Yeah.
So I think I would probably give them a score of 7.99999.
How many digits of precision are we going here? Right?
Just this, I think that was 5.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But no, really, really good, really entertaining. So
yes, still enjoyed them enormously.
Yes. Then I think that wraps up episodes 7 and 8.
Yeah, those numbers still sound good.
I think so. So next week will be a Voyager episode, and then we will be back the following week with episodes 9 and 10. We're just about to record Threshold. Many of you will know what that means just by hearing that title.
Oh, yeah.
All right. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own over-analysis of these 2 episodes or of any episodes, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at ReBingeIt@gmail.com. You can also hit us up on the different socials, the thing that used to be called Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, and also YouTube at ReBingeIt. You can join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on Star Trek Prodigy, a ReBingeIt podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.
And listen to Janeway.
And don't be a Borg. Or a Borg-influenced computer.
Yeah, don't be either one.